together, Lord, bind us together with cords that cannot be broken. Bind us together, Lord, bind us together, Lord, bind us together in love.
In March, I completed my 8th year with you at King's Chapel, and what a year it has been. Everything that I and the rest of your church staff have done this year has been with these twin goals. 1, to bind us together as a community, and 2, to provide you spiritual nurture. We may have been physically closed, but we have remained spiritually open. With these twin needs in mind, last year I asked each member of the church staff to develop new online programming for you, the congregation. These programs are nearly all recorded for you, able to be viewed again through our King's Chapel YouTube page. Our music director, Heinrich Christensen, with the choir, produced several recorded concerts, brought community together through new live get-togethers, and created compositions of our full choir using new technology. What appears to us as an Easter anthem of 16 mixed voices is actually 16 different sung videos performed at home by each choir member, then digitally sent to Heinrich and edited by him for hours to create the cohesive whole you hear. For our Christmas Eve lessons and carols service, the 22 pieces you heard required editing together over 200 individual sung videos. Bravo. All of your church staff undertook similar roles this year, developing new events and using new technology to bind us together in new ways. Our Minister for Membership and Education, David Waters, strengthened the church school by inviting our children to regularly participate in our virtual worship services. He engaged them in service projects with our elders and met on Zoom with them in a new biweekly kids' time. Many thanks to David and to all the church school parents. David also joined me in a weekly gathering called Coffee with the Clergy each Thursday at 10 a.m. Slowly over the course of the year, as more of us grew accustomed to Zoom, a new community of caring grew on Thursday mornings. Our virtual setting also led some new members to us, 2 who joined in December and found us online after the pandemic began. Likewise, for homecoming and other major events, our new online reality makes it easier to connect with all of you, living wherever you are, however distant. When I led a 6-week spiritual autobiography class in the fall, one participant could come from her new home outside of LA. Participation increased for our history programs also. Our historian, Faye Charpentier, was busy creating new programs that she expertly delivered to both members and the wider public. They are available on our website. You may wish to revisit her lectures on the early ministers of King's Chapel, James Freeman and our journey to Unitarian thought, the women of King's Chapel authors, presentations about the Fugitive Slave Act, the memorials now on our sanctuary walls, and the connection between King's Chapel and the Atlantic slave trade. Faye and David also worked on the newly formed Memorials Committee, chaired by Dean Deniston and subcommittee chairs Miguel Gomez-Ibanez and Cliff Allen, all 3 former senior wardens. Based on the foundation of 5 years of Faye's thorough research, which can be accessed through a new excellent web portal, our church is now considering how to memorialize the over 219 men, women, and children enslaved by our clergy and by our pew holders. As many others are also re-examining their slave history, including all of the other colonial Episcopal churches in Massachusetts. They are now looking to us and to our website as a model for how to do the needed research. Dean, Miguel, and Cliff hosted 2 open meetings in April for discussion and feedback, where many of you reacted favorably to the work done to date. In worship, David and I, Laura Zeugner, and Heinrich have worked to bring you 2 weekly worship services every Sunday all year long, and many special seasonal services. Total, they are about 115 different worship services we've given you in the last year. Many thanks to Laura, our worship coordinator, for organizing all the many moving parts. Interestingly, in the years past, the 9 a.m. morning light service has been closed for the summer because many worshipers are out of town. But this year, because Morning Light met by Zoom and people could attend from any location, we had our highest morning light attendance ever. and never stopped meeting year-round. This weekly live service met the need for a number of you who missed live church. Because you see, by Zoom, we do get to see one another's faces, and we do get to hear each other's voices. And most importantly, we can still pray together, lighting candles as we name our joys and concerns, especially during the pandemic. It has been a godsend to celebrate good news with church family and to receive support from each other in the midst of hardship. All year, I have been describing King's Chapel as a praying church, founded, of course, with our special King's Chapel prayer book. And I'm very pleased that now prayer centers both of our Sunday services, morning light and morning prayer. Our prayer life is robust in other ways, too. Under the leadership of Cynthia Perkins, head of our prayer circle, 12 church members pray daily for special needs made known to them. Prayer circle members hold both the names and the prayer requests in total confidence. This last year, there have been 60 people on our prayer lists, averaging 15 or 16 a month, many of whom are there each month for continual prayers, but others who come and go as they request. Several for whom we pray are longtime King's Chapel members. These daily prayers are in addition to the many names the congregation prays for together at morning prayer in a list that David and I read. This year, I added one more program related to pastoral care in preparation for a lay pastoral care team. Therefore, since last August, I've met regularly with 6 trainees over many hours of coursework and group meetings. I also walked with 4 of our beloved members to their final rest. Newly gathered unto God's glory are Pamela Bergeron, Susan Playfair, David Morse, and Stephen Weber, our former treasurer. Other ways in which we've been invested in your spiritual nurture this year include the many small groups that both staff and lay leaders have led through the year. A 4-week Advent group, following the Advent booklet that we mailed to all of you. A 5-week Lenten group, led by lay leaders who produced a beautiful Lenten booklet that you received. The monthly Theology on Tap open discussion that David led. And then groups on Joy Harjo's poetry, Ibrahim Kendi's book, Becoming an Anti-Racist, and Carl Scoville's new book on marriage. I led an open discussion of funerals during COVID, co-sponsored by the Boston Public Library and Beacon Hill Village. And every week, Tim Nelson Hoy leads Wednesday night Bible study by Zoom. Of course, we also grow spiritually through our work for greater justice in the world. Led by Dory Seavey, Julie Hyde, Kent Wittenberg, Gary Riccio, and Bill Wilson, a dynamic group is helping us to consider our environment and its place in our lives through a January retreat that was led by the Reverend Fred Small, to an art show, a cleanup around the Charles River, important talks, and a successful Get Out the Vote drive in November. The church hung a Black Lives banner after the murder of George Floyd, and we now ring our bells on the 11th of every month to signify that we're at the 11th hour of our Earth's climate crisis. It's an urgent matter. As in years past, this year, a growing group made sandwiches for Common Cathedral, our sister church of unhoused individuals on Boston Common, and many of you participated in the Walk for Peace, sponsored by our partner, the Louis D. Brown Peace Institute. To build community, we held block parties on Fridays through the summer. Many of you tasted cheese at an event that Ann and Peter Sexton organized. We're on the Zoom coffee hours that we held on the first Sunday of each month since winter. Though our church building was empty, Parish Administrator Gretchen Horton and Sexton Clark Aikens worked alongside contractors enabled by our trustees to complete a wonderful rebuilding of our historic front columns and needed repointing of our masonry. Our ventilation was improved and faster Wi-Fi has been installed. Both those things in preparation for our hoped-for safe return to the sanctuary for homecoming this September. Stay tuned. With all these changes, we've been richly blessed by our new communications director, Jennifer Roche, who has instituted a plethora of changes to keep everyone abreast of our life together. From a new website and weekly e-newsletter to improved social media and a new Monday missive summarizing all that will be upcoming this week at King's Chapel. Jennifer has also been instrumental in the outreach made by our stewardship committee under the able leadership of new member Gail Dankert. Gail, Jennifer, and the Stewardship Committee have emphasized our gratitude for our spiritual life together. Though a pandemic could have resulted in a decline in giving, instead, you made 2020 our best year ever for stewardship, and we're on track to do the same this year. I am deeply grateful for this church, its leaders, and all of our staff for keeping our focus on things that matter, building the beloved community by building up our spiritual lives, grounded in the one who seeks that we all may be one. Bind us together, Lord. Bind us together, Lord. Bind us together in love. Amen.